Welcome back, class. We just discussed how plants emerged as a kingdom, and now we'll talk about how it is divided into different phyla. So, one way that we can divide land plants informally is if they have vascular tissue. Vascular tissue would be tissue within the plants that is kind of, you could compare it to the vascular tissue in a person that would carry blood or lymph. In a plant, their vascular tissue would carry their water and nutrients for a plant. So most plants have vascular tissue. If you think of a tree or a flower, these are vascular plants. They have tissues that will carry water or carry sugar through the plant. Non-vascular plants do not have vascular tissue, and they're commonly called bryophytes. I do want to point out, this is not a genetic grouping. So all bryophytes are not going to be genetically or evolutionarily related to each other. This is a grouping based on their morphology and could include convergent evolution, bringing disparate plant species into having a similar form. Within the seedless vascular plants, we have two clades: the lycophytes, which are the club mosses and relatives, and the monilophytes, which are the ferns and their relatives. A seed is an embryo, so it is a fertilized diploid cell with nutrients, and it's surrounded by a protective coat. And then seed plants can be divided further, and these are clades. So these are evolutionary history. Gymnosperms, which are naked seed plants. This includes things like conifers. And angiosperms, which are flowering plants. So if we go from our ancestral green algae, we have the non-vascular plants, our liverworts, mosses, and hornworts. Then the vascular plants would be lycophytes, which would be the club mosses, spike mosses, and quillworts. The monilophytes, which are ferns, horsetails, and musk ferns. And seed plants, which are our gymnosperms and our angiosperms. We are going to go through 10 phyla of extant plants, living plant lineages. The non-vascular plants are bryophytes. We have Hepatophyta, Bryophyta, and Anthocerophyta. The vascular plants, we have the seedless vascular plants, Lycophyta and Monilophyta. And the seed plants, we have gymnosperms, which are Ginkgophyta, Cycadophyta, Netophyta, and Coniferophyta, and angiosperms, the Anthophyta. So just like we divided our animals into different phyla, we're now going to go through and look at our plants through different phyla. In this video, we're mainly going to talk about our non-vascular plants, and we'll come back and talk about these in the following videos. So non-vascular plants, or bryophytes, these are 3 phyla of small, herbaceous plants. They're not woody, and they're small, which makes sense. If they're not vascular, they don't have really good ways to either support themselves as growing and also to deliver water and sugar to diverse parts of the plant. So these plants are going to stay smaller. These are our liverworts and our hornworts. So that word wort just means herb. So liverworts are herbs shaped like a liver. Hornworts are herbs shaped like a horn. And then the mosses, the bryophytes. The non-vascular plants were the earliest lineages to diverge from the common ancestor of land plants. And in all bryophytes, the gametophytes are larger and longer living than sporophytes. So we call them gametophyte dominant. Sporophytes are only going to be present only part of the time. Let's go through this video of a moss life cycle.
Let's see how the moss life cycle fits the alternation of generations pattern. Which letter indicates a gametophyte? Meiosis always produces haploid cells. In plants, these cells are spores, which develop into gametophytes. Therefore, these plants are the moss gametophytes. And these are the moss sporophytes. In contrast to ferns, the moss sporophyte is not an independent plant. It remains attached to and dependent upon the gametophyte. In mosses, the gametophyte is the larger, longer-lived generation. Also notice that sperm cells from a male plant swim to reach an egg on a female plant.
So, in all bryophytes, the haploid gametophyte generation is dominant. It's larger, persists longer. Sporophytes are small and short-lived. You can go back and watch that video that just played. That's kind of what that video is telling you. In a favorable habitat, bryophyte spores will disperse and germinate, and they create a one-cell thick filament called a protonema. And the protonema will grow a bud that has apical meristems that create the gametophore, and the protonema and gametophore unite to produce the body of a moss gametophyte. That is what you are seeing in the green images here. The gametophytes are anchored to a rhizoid, which are filaments that absorb water and minerals. You could compare them to a root, although they are not developed all the way as a vascular plant root would be. And gametophytes have multiple gametangia that have antheridia and archegonia. We talked about that in the first lecture for this chapter. The antheridia are male and produce sperm, and the archegonia are female and produce eggs. And just like that video just said, the male producing sperm, those sperm have to swim through water. So these plants are going to be most common in moist or damp habitats where the sperm can travel through the water to fertilize the egg. And also, the male and female gametangia are going to need to be close together so that the sperm are able to travel the distance to get to the eggs. So, bryophytes, sporophytes grow out of the archegonia, and they're the smallest and simplest sporophytes of all extant plant groups. The sporophytes have a foot, a seta, which is a stalk, that's what these stalks are, and a sporangium. The sporangium is also called the capsule here. And that will discharge spores. Hornwort and moss sporophytes have stomata, but liverworts do not. Liverworts, or phylum Hepatophyta, hepato meaning liver. This name, liver, refers to its shape. It's shaped like a liver, like a human liver. And members of this group include Merchangia and Plagioschela, or the leafy liverworts. Here you can see them. Hornworts, or phylum Anthocerophyta, they have sporophytes that are long and tapered and horn-shaped. They can grow up to 5 centimeters tall, so about 2 inches. They lack a seta, and they only contain 1 sporangia. And the sporangia will release its spores by splitting open. Gametophytes usually have more than 1 sporophyte attached, and they're usually some of the first plants to colonize open areas with moist soils. They have symbiotic relationships with nitrogen-fixing bacteria, and that symbiotic relationship lets them survive that new habitat. Then our mosses, or phylum Bryophyta, have gametophytes that are usually less than 15 centimeter tall, but they can range up to about 60 centimeters, so they can grow over a foot tall here, sometimes up to close to 2 feet. Moss carpets in the woods, when you think of just walking through the woods, that moss that you see, those are gametophytes, and they have leaves that are 1 cell thick, leaves in quotation marks because they're not really fully developed leaves like you would see in a vascular plant, but they're similar-ish. And then most of the sporophytes have a single seta and a capsule on top, just like in this picture. That capsule is usually going to be tan or brownish in color, and they'll turn more brownish red when they are ready to release their spores. So how do bryophytes differ from other plants? And give some examples of how the structure fits the function in bryophytes. Okay, I will see you back in our next lecture video talking about our vascular plants. And if you have any questions, as always, come by office hours or send me an email. See you later. Bye.